No role plays, no conference calls, no BS. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader. This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo, in this episode, I want to talk about a clip that I saw on LinkedIn. This is a video clip from a woman named Wakeman. She is a self-proclaimed drama researcher, but she is also a New York Times bestselling author, and she kind of gives some really interesting and real-world insight to the behaviors seen in a lot of organizations, and also the behaviors seen from leaders. And so I want to play that clip for our audience real quick. It's about 90 seconds long, and then I want to discuss it with you.
Sounds good.
That's on the back of their badges. I have a question. How can I help? And whenever they come tattle on me, I first translate their story, and I ask them that famous question. Oh my gosh, we just got 3 projects dumped on us. We have 3 new projects. Continue. So everybody else waits to the last minute and don't even care about us, and now we just found out about it. So we recently got new information. Continue. Yeah, be tight with it. Somebody came to me and said the conversion was a mess. Over the weekend, IT can't manage the way I have a paper bag. They're horrible. They don't care about us. It's a total disaster. And I said, awesome, I get it. What did you do to help? Like, what do you mean, what did I do to help? I'm in here telling you. I said, so far it hasn't been helpful. You've committed character assassination of our colleagues in IT. All I've heard is that the conversion didn't go as planned, and our IT colleagues, our partners, might be suffering. We should tend to them. Who are you mad at? Karen. I go, come with me, Tammy. Tammy was just in my office sharing her love and concern for her IT partners. I think I'm summarizing. And she has a question for you. Go ahead, Tammy. Tammy's like, what can I do to help? And Karen had the most beautiful answers. It's the only relevant question if we're on the same team. See, most people don't know their ego just isn't their amigo. Too many people believe everything they think. If you think it, you believe it.
All right, so that's pretty interesting. I like that video a lot. My first reaction was there's some of it that is a little bit dramatized, meaning in a lot of organizations, I don't know, there's a little bit of it's almost like a caricature of what people's reactions are sometimes. Like the number of times that people run in saying, my hair's on fire, IT doesn't know what they're doing, that kind of stuff. Do those conversations happen? Sure. But I think they're a little bit more passive aggressive in many organizations and less kind of like out there, yelling and screaming. But the sentiment behind it is spot on in terms of how individual employees can react to things that happen in their world that weren't expected, and ultimately what the job of the leader is. And it might seem a little simplified, but I think the job of a leader, a lot of it is this kind of translation engine for employees. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I love it. And I love, to me personally, like where it's kind of like, not only am I going to lead this by example, but like I'm going to force some of the dialogue in a right way. Like I'm going to give somebody the second chance. So kind of like you came to me with this complaint and how you feel about another team, another person, and that type of thing. I'm going to bring you to that person, and I'm going to make you sound like the hero. I love that approach.
I'm paraphrasing. That was the best part.
I know I'm paraphrasing here, but what they basically said was like, you're amazing, and clearly you just need something. Like, how can we help? Right? And like I just love that. I think that's so important and such a good way to also it's a form of accountability that I really appreciate, which is like, it doesn't have to be this way, and let me show you how this is going to help not only get the work done, but build better relationships without all the chatter and without all of the behind the scenes. And to your point, like it's rare that like in the movie somebody comes in and slams the office door and starts to yell at the boss or whatever about something that's going on. In real life, this happens all of the time, but it's usually to the side or quietly or I think the role of leaders is exactly to do that. Like let's challenge it in the moment. Let's reframe what this is. Let's call people to the carpet a little bit around like being, like living our values, living what we say that we are, and reminding people of who we are and what we do and how we approach things. I think it's such a great example.
So for a person to react the way she reacts in her example, you first have to have a good relationship with that employee. Otherwise, how it comes off at is stop being emotional, right? Like that's what the implication of what she's saying is. And if you're doing this to an employee with whom you don't have a positive relationship or a strong kind of relationship of candor, where you can talk openly with that person, then that's not going to go over very well. You would have to kind of tailor the verbiage to be a little bit less stop being emotional and more about, let's talk about this further. Let's have a dialogue about this before we go talk to the people who you have a problem with. But assuming you have that relationship with that person and you can say these things to them, there's this kind of moment of realization that I think a lot of people have. And it's rooted in taking their job seriously, which is good. Meaning if an employee is reacting in this way, the first thing that you need to know as a leader is it means they care about their job. If they didn't care, they wouldn't care. They wouldn't come to you and say, this is terrible. They care about the outcome, or at the very least, they care about their personal outcomes, and they're worried about how this is making their outcomes look. But either way, they care. And so you can't shut it down by being dismissive of what their concerns are. You have to acknowledge their concerns, but you have to also bring some truth to what their concerns are in the context of what it really is. And in most organizations, when these things happen, you do have to bring yourself back to this moment of, okay, I need to take my job seriously, but not take myself too seriously. And whatever this job is, whatever this problem is, chances are we're not saving lives, right? We're not curing cancer. We're doing whatever this thing is, and tomorrow we'll do something different again, or next quarter or whatever it is. But for the moment, this is what's big in the employee's mind. So let's put it into context with something larger than that, and then we can start to have some realistic dialogue about what the situation actually is, as opposed to validating the kind of the emotional off the cliff that the employee might be going through, and then potentially making the situation worse than it already is.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I also think that there's a part of this which is, I think, in leadership and again, I'm no behavioral scientist and not a psychologist or anything whatsoever, but there's a part of this in leadership where teaching people by matching the urgency or kind of the approach that they take. When you're talking about leaders talking to other leaders. Mm-hmm. And when somebody comes in a little bit hot, I think one of the things that does not help in some instances is responding in kind of like let's bring it down. What can I do?
Sure.
This type, like, no. I've learned in my career that I match that energy quickly. Mm-hmm. Hey, this is what happened last weekend. I can't believe this. They screwed this up. They were supposed to do this. They were supposed to do that. And then I'm going to match that energy and be like, okay, well, tell me more. And clearly you have an opinion here, but also what's your responsibility in all of this? Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden it gets stopped in the tracks real quick, right? Like there's just this matching of the energy, which I think is what Sai was kind of doing in this element of like, I hear you, I'm going to challenge you, and we're going to take care of this right now. But we're going to do it in a very specific kind of way. And so I think that's such an important thing, because then there are those times when somebody walks in and says, hey, can I have a couple of minutes? Like, I want to share this with you. This is what happened last week. It's kind of bothering me. Maybe this could have been done differently. And now I'm going to have that type of a calmer conversation. Okay, like, walk me through it. How did you get there? What are you thinking? How do you think we got to that point? And that might be different personality types, but I also think that just that element of leadership is healthy, and I've used that over time for those leaders that I've had that typically have a high level of energy, a high level of passion, and like when they get worked up, it's like you're saying, like the sky is falling, like
right.
Like everything is burning down right now around us, and it's like, well, it's not, right? Like that thing maybe didn't go as planned, but that thing can be addressed. It can be fixed. We can be adjusted. We can learn from it. So, but when they come in with that level of energy, I have learned to kind of respond back with that level of energy in the questions I ask or the challenges that I give. and that usually helps to bring them down. And then coming down to a more of a kind of a regular energy. Now we have a chance to really have some really good dialogue. Again, though, you said this earlier, that relationship is so key. Like you have to know your people. You have to you probably start this approach in a way that is more composed, more calm, more questioning, more understanding, and then as you have this ongoing dialogue, this ongoing professional relationship, then you start to say that, like, hey, when you come in at 11. Right? Like, I spend the first 15 minutes trying to bring you down to an 8 just so we can talk about this. Like, this is something that we want to discuss and work towards together.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking of like the employee archetypes that kind of have to have these conversations with. There's another a potential employee and I've had this happen, where if you know your employees well, sometimes responding in exactly the same way as them can cause them to take it down on their own. So I'll give you the example. They come in and they say, I can't believe this other team did this. And I'll respond with, wait, are you serious? Oh, I'm going to put a stop to this right now. Let's go. And you get up and you start to like walk, and then they'll stop you. Wait, hold on. Let's talk about this a little bit more. It's like, you want to talk about it a little bit more? So maybe it's not quite to the level that you say it is. Okay, well, let's talk about this now, right? So there are different employee reactions to situations like this, and all of them should be dealt with in a unique way for that employee, whatever kind of resolves the situation best. But the thing that Sai says in her video that I think jumps out the most, is kind of a common thread through all of this, is, are you on the same team? Meaning not you and the employee, the person you're talking to and the person who they are complaining about in the moment, the person or the entity or the business arm, whatever it is. Are you on the same team? And the answer is yes, you're on the same team if you're in the same organization. That's the answer. Do you treat them as such? And so the likelihood of, in her example, of the IT team putting together this conversion and seeing that it wasn't going to work out correctly for the rest of the organization, and then going, yeah, but I mean, does it really matter? It doesn't matter to us. Doesn't matter to you if it doesn't work out for this organization? No, it doesn't matter to me. All right, let's just put it through the way it is. The likelihood of that conversation happening is 0. That's not what happened. What happened was they were just as stressed over the conversion as you are being stressed by the outcome of it. And if you go into the situation assuming positive intent and assuming that the person who is making your life more difficult right now isn't sitting there thinking, how can I make this person's life more difficult right now? But instead, they're just trying to get through the day the same way you're trying to get through the day. Once you can admit that and focus on it from that standpoint, it reframes the context of what your potential feedback or argument or next steps are. If you don't have the ability to do that, that's how you ruin relationships. Or oftentimes what happens is the confrontation never happens. The employee is allowed to just go through their life thinking that this other entity or person doesn't care about them. They do things on their own, and there's this kind of stale or stress to the air between two parts of an organization that shouldn't be there if you're working towards the same ultimate goals.
Yeah, no, I love that, and it's absolutely correct, because I think of the times when these things pop up and they happen, and sometimes my first question is like, okay, so it didn't go well, or you have this concern, like, so do you think they did it on purpose?
Yeah.
Right, and then somebody's like, well, no. Okay. So if they didn't do it on purpose, then something didn't go right. How do you think they feel right now about this not going the way they wanted it to go?
Mm-hmm.
And then what do you think is the right approach to make sure that they can get the work done and they feel supported? Because it sounds like this didn't go well, and it sounds like they probably don't feel great about this. Like, what's the way that we can add value here, or what do you think we should do to get them across that finish line? And again, like making it clear, to your point and to Sai's point, like, this is a team. We are here together to work on this. There are going to be things that cause issues. There are going to be personal situations where people, egos get in the way and stuff like that. But when it comes to translating, as a leader, this type of drama that happens, I think it's so important to remind people that we're on the same team.
Right. Here's my my periodic parenting reference here. I saw something when my middle child, who is now 9, when she was 2, and my son was 4. So this was 7 years ago now. I saw something online that kind of reframed my perspective on parenting as a whole, and I've tried to hold on to it. And I'm not perfect. Sometimes I forget it and have to remind myself, but I'm better at it now than I was. The thing that I saw online said, your child is not giving you a hard time. Your child is having a hard time. And it's this kind of like, oh, okay. So when my life is made more difficult by my child, they're not trying to give me a hard time. They're having a hard time. And they just don't have the coping mechanisms that I have as an adult. So by me reacting poorly just because they're acting poorly does nothing for the situation. And it's the exact same thing, except that hopefully, in the work environment, your coworkers and colleagues do have the coping mechanisms to, at least, be professional. But it's the exact same thing. In Sai's example, the IT team was not giving you a hard time. They were having a hard time. And so if you can approach the situation from how do I solve this person's hard time, as opposed to how do I go in there and accuse them of giving me a hard time, that changes the outcome, and it can build incredibly strong relationships that you can then leverage for future projects. The number of times when reaching out to offer help to somebody who normally I wouldn't even interact with, but because I can see they're having a difficult time doing something, I reach out to offer my assistance. And then now that person is a resource to me for future projects or future endeavors. That's how you build networks of people who are committed to each other, is when you reach out for something that that is not your responsibility, but you take it on because you know you're a member of the same team.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to this episode's 1 minute hack. But first, a few words from our sponsors.
All right, for this episode's 1 minute hack, here's what I want you to do. This is a moment of reflection on the last time this has happened to you, where this kind of drama gets presented to you and what your reaction was. What Sai says basically in a nutshell is that your job as a leader is to be a translation engine to kind of remove that drama, but not to be the hero to solve the problem. In a lot of situations, the go-to for a leader is to tell people to work it out themselves, or to try to work it out for them. And neither is the correct way. The correct way is to kind of bring people back to what normal is, bring people back to a level where they can have a nice conversation about it, and then allow them to work it out, because that's where the real work happens. Don't try to be the hero to solve the problem for them, but don't let them go into a situation where they have incorrect assumptions about another person, and then they try to solve it themselves in a way that is not productive. Be the translation engine, but don't be the hero.
Yeah, and I think it's a great 1 minute hack and a good reminder of that exactly. It's like, I think having the team, if we're talking about building a culture of teamwork and kind of respect and trust amongst them, they have to do that work themselves. I can't walk into a team and say, hey, congratulations, everybody, I'm the leader here now, and you all trust each other. Mm-hmm. And you're all going to assume that the other person's doing really great work, and we're not going to question one another, and we're going to believe what the other person says. You can say that, but the reality is that only comes to life when the team has the time together to work through those types of things. And I want to underline that part where kind of Sai did that in the video example, where when she walked into the other office with the employee, she said, they have a question for you. Yeah. She didn't walk in and say, hey, this is what I heard, and how can we help? She said, this is what I heard, this is what's going on. She had a question for you and made that person have the conversation. Like that's the idea here. And then number one, they get to look like the hero, like, wow, that person's really concerned, and they went to Sai and and they want to help. She has a question for me. Like those types of connection points are critical when building the type of culture that you want to have.
And you can see when she's kind of acting out the parts of the three people in the situation, the employee who she brought into the office, there's that moment where they have a little bit of egg on their face, where they have to eat crow just a little bit, but it is quickly overshadowed by this idea that they get to be the hero and they get to help out the situation. And clearly that they have a relationship with each other that says that, Sai is not going to rub in the fact that there's egg on their face. You're just going to move on from it and then hopefully that employee is more apt to be able to solve this on their own next time. Although maybe not. Maybe that employee is that type of person where this is your job with them. This is part of your leadership experience with this employee, is that you need to go through this exercise with them each time, and then they can be able to solve the problem on their own. But either way, this is a tremendously large part of leadership when it comes to knowing who your people are, knowing what makes them tick, and knowing how to kind of take them from a level where they are not productive to a level where they are not just productive, but where they can be problem-solving engines all on their own.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hack Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you all next time.